All right, I think I'm live. This is going to be a short one, just something that I really wanted to show everyone because this is a tool I've talked about quite a bit in my podcast, but never really shown what it looks like. I might actually clear all of my data. Um, Maybe not all of it actually. Let's start at the top and just delete the user. And I'll add that back in again to show that part. Okay. Just going to find this stream, and it looks like it is live and working. Just going to get that showing correctly on the side. All right, so this is LSD Project. And the idea is when you start a new project, one of the first things you're going to do is model your data. And one of the worst things about that is often you'll model your data, things will go wrong, and then you model your data again and things will go wrong, and you model it again, and you kind of have to keep doing this cycle. But what often happens is, especially new projects, people start essentially solidifying their data structure in their database really early on in the project. This is something that I've had a problem with in the past. Basically, stamping, I call it stamping, stamping my structure into the database. And once it's stamped in there, it's a little bit hard to change, even with really cool tooling. So there's some really cool tooling now, like Prisma, I'm pretty sure has got, and I'm looking into using this in future projects, has got a way for you to essentially define a schema for what your database looks like. And when you make changes, it will automatically find those changes and migrate your database automatically. And, add in warnings if fields are going to be deleted or if any dangerous stuff is going to happen. So I'm really intrigued by that concept. However, as you've heard me talk about in prior videos, we've now got a tool which is View Model, and View Model allows you to essentially use your computer as the database. And because of that, it allows us to iterate very, very quickly. It means that we can quickly make changes to our project, make it what the client wants. You've probably already heard me talk about this, so I'll stop there and show you what LSD Project is and how it's going to fit into the puzzle of all the stuff that I've been working on lately. All right, so, and this is a bit of a diary. A lot of this stuff isn't released yet. It's all, it's basically, I've got like 4 or 5 major tools that need to be in sort of a beta stage before I can kind of release them, because they all piggyback off each other so closely. So until those major tools are built, it's basically just kind of bits and pieces here and there, and I have to work on all of them together because they all work in harmony. So anyway, this is LSD Project. Very ugly right now. That's because the UI itself is kind of working off of experiments with Augment Quasar, like this whole search and everything showing up here in the menu and the edit and delete button. That's all built with Augment Quasar, so that it's kind of like really clean. But it just meant that I didn't have flexibility in my UI, and it looks a little bit ugly, but that's okay. So we can go ahead and create a new model. And I want you to think of this as basically creating a structure. So let's just say we want to have a user. We then click on there and then create the structure for a user. And the reason that I'm doing this right now is because View Model comes with a whole bunch of dummy data. And this just makes it really easy for people to get started. So let me just jump out of full screen here. Whack these side by side. And we'll jump into users.json. So this is what a user looks like. Actually, I'll jump into user.ts. Oops, somebody just got home. I can hear the dogs barking their heads off. Yeah, users.ts, I think is where I put it. Yeah, so this is the structure of a user. But usually what would happen is first I would create that user in LSD Project, and it actually generates this file for me. It automatically generates the Pina ORM model for the user, and using the structure, you would also be able to generate your Laravel models and migrations, or your Supabase models. Basically, the idea is you have one source of truth for your structure, which is what LSD Project does. It creates that source of truth, and then it would be used to generate everything. So a user has got a name. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the name field. The name of that field is a name. And we'll come in here and we'll say that that's a string. Now, the other thing you'll be able to do is select a component here. Now, I can't do that yet because I haven't set up my components, but essentially you'll be able to come up here and say manage components. Okay, looks like I do actually have a few of them here. So I wonder why they're not showing up in that menu. Oh, there we go. It looks like I just had to show the menu first. Okay, bit of a bug there. That's all right. I can fix that. So you can also say it's the field. The name is of the field is name. The field type is a string, but you can go one step further and say, okay, what component are we going to use to display that string? And then you might say, okay, we're going to have an input component to display that string. And then, okay, what's the description going to be for that component? What's the label going to be for that component? And so we might say the label is user name. Yeah. And the really cool thing about this is when you set up the components, so let me just update that. When we set up our components here and manage components, we can actually, I'll go click on add here. We actually use JSON schema to define how you set the props for that component. So this is really, really wicked. Check this out. If we go to string long input, yeah, no, this would just be input. I think that's the one I just did then. So we can see that it's got a description and a label. And we can even see that for a description, we want to use the input component. And the label of that is description. So basically, we're using JSON schema. And I've got using a JSON schema generator to allow you to basically give you that menu. Hang on, my dogs are going off. I'm going to have to go maybe bring them upstairs. They go a bit crazy when they see other dogs. Hey, puppy! Come on! Hey, now! Billy, come on! Good girl! Good girl, come on! Come on! You can do it! Come on! Get in here! Good girl. Alright, now we're barking. Okay, I've got him. Yeah, so this part's kind of hard to explain, but essentially, you'll be able to have your own component library, and you'll be able to say what props you expect to go into those components, and then you'll be able to add them in here, and you'll be able to have this form. You'll even be able to generate your own form for what goes into that component. So this part's a bit hard to explain, but it's really, really wicked, and it basically allows us to tie our schema data into our UI library. So then what we end up doing is we say, and this would happen in Augment Quasar. So let me just find the Augment Quasar project. Oh, actually, I think I got it open somewhere else currently. That's view AGV form. Let's bring that across. Let's Augment Quasar. Yeah, there we go. So this actually comes with a default schema. So we got here our input schemas. So basically this aligns the different types of inputs with the form generator. So for example, just then we created a string input. If I come back here, so the field type is a string and the component is input. So what that would do is that would come into our input UI schema and it would find the key of string. So let me just see if I can find that quickly. Here we go. And then it would find the key of input because there's different ways you can enter a string. You might have a select, you might have an input, you might have a long input. There's different ways you can get a string. And in this case, we just want a normal input. So what it does is it goes, okay, the type of field is string and the component is input. So that's how it would then find this string input component. And that string input component has a description and a label. So we come back here, we can see here, this has a description and a label. So that description and label ends up going through to the string input component and passed here as a label and a description. It's really, really wicked. So the form generator, basically all of these potential components get married up here. So when we're first creating our project, when we've got our idea for the project, up front, we can basically enter all the data we need to generate the forms. So usually I found that a lot of projects only go 2 levels deep. They go, okay, what's the field type? Well, one level deep, they just say, okay, what's the type of field? It is a string, and therefore maybe they've got some sort of a generator that generates the string. However, what we're trying to do is go 2 levels lower here. We go, okay, we want to have a string, and we want it to be a input component for that string. And these are the properties that we're going to pass down to that component. So the description might be like the user's full name. And maybe that ends up showing up as a tooltip. I can't remember what I'm doing here. But another cool thing about this is it's actually, at this point, completely agnostic of Vue. So we're using JSON schema here, even though I use Vue to create this project. At the end of the day, if I just press update there, this is what we get generated. So we get generated this user schema that says it's got a name property. And by the way, the description is equal to the user's full name, and it's got a label equal to username. So this schema could actually be used for something that isn't Vue. It could be used for React. It could be used for Svelte. It could be used for literally anything. You could have a TV application that maybe has a different way of displaying components. You might have somebody who's building a native mobile app. So maybe you're not actually compiling. I don't know why you would do this, but maybe you need a super, super fast app. So you're doing native mobile. And then in that case, you can use this to essentially generate the form. So this is a really, really powerful way of defining what your model structures look like. All right, so this is basically step 1. We say what our models are. So we've got this sample data project, we've got a user model, and it's got a field of name. Now it gets even cooler. We can also do relationships with our data. So let me just throw that on my bottom screen now. So this has many relationship with a user, with an album via the user ID. And so in order to define this relationship, rather than typing all of that out, again, this is ridiculously simple. We just say add relationship, a user, and I know this is a little bit ugly. I promise I'll make it better before it's released. A user has many, has many albums because I created that model earlier. And then you can say what component. I haven't defined any components for this yet, but you can even have a component then for your has many relationship so that when it shows up in the form, you can have a select menu. Actually, I'll show you what one of these looks like. Have I got this server running? Man, I've got so many things running right now. There it is. I think I've got one here. Yeah, so this component is actually a belongs to relationship, but the code for this is ridiculously simple because we've already created everything we need to basically work with the backend. So if I click on here now, this traveling from, it automatically fetches all the data from the backend. I'm actually using a typicode backend for this. It's even got searching, so I can say VERO, and that's going to run a search for me for anything that's got VERO in it. And this is using a backend. None of this code had to be written. We wrote it once. We figured out how to do it once. And if you're using Vue Model, you write it 0 times because Vue Model's automatically going to have all of this matched up. That's why I built Vue Model. One of the reasons I built Vue Model was so that we'll now be able to essentially create these drop-down menus automatically for us. If you decide to go all in on my contract with how to work with the backend, I can do a lot of work for you with these forms. And this is the shit that I've usually just never bothered to build because it's too much effort. Like, who could be bothered to make it so that when you click on there, it only shows a few of the records, and then when you scroll to the bottom, it shows more of the records. So it's going a bit fast at the moment, but you can see we've actually got scrolling pagination there. Because you can't, if you've got 5,000 records or 10,000, 20,000, you can't just grab all those records all at once. You need to have some form of pagination. So now we've got sort of scrolling pagination built in, which is really annoying to build, but we only have to build it once now. And now we can do searching as well. And this is all using the backend. This isn't using, this isn't like getting all the data and then doing that on the front end. This is all using proper techniques to actually get that data from a backend. And you don't have to write that code anymore. So the whole point is we can come in here and say this has got a has many relationship with albums, and then we'll select the component, which basically ends up being this component here. In this case, it belongs to, but you'd have it for a has many as well. And yeah, that's it. You've now got your relationship set up, and when you end up generating your form, you end up getting this beautiful component that is already built for you. Really, really cool stuff. So let's go ahead and create that relationship. Another thing to point out is if I click on here and have a look at the schema, so we got albums here, and it gives us all the data to essentially figure out how to find albums. All right, so this is JSON schema that helps us find those albums. If I cross out of that, and then I come into our album, notice that it now has the user relationship. Oh, I think I already put it in there maybe, which is why that's showing up twice. Yeah, right, I've messed something up here. Have I? Yep. Oh, okay, something's going dodgy. Anyway, okay, the point is, let me just delete user there. And if I go back to user, notice it's been deleted out of albums now. It's lost albums now. So if we say user, create a relationship, I'm basically just going to do this again. A user has many albums, create that. So now let's come here into albums, and it automatically creates this user relationship on the other side. So if we have a look at the schema for that, this actually has two fields. It's got the user, so this is the relationship definition, but then you also need a user ID for that. So under here, we've also got the user ID that was automatically added in as well. So how cool is that? We define the relationship once, and then it gets pasted in. Essentially, we get all of the JSON schema fields that we need for that. Now, if I click on edit here, and then more, if you don't like the naming conventions here, so for example, if you got a post, usually you wouldn't want user ID on that. You might want, for example, the author ID. So you can change all of your labels and your internal labels for that, and that'll all work fine. So this is like the entity names internally, and then these are the labels that show on the front end. So all of that can be built, can be customized as well. Now, one thing I want to build in the future is merging. So I want to make it so that you can merge your own schemas into this schema here. So eventually I want to be able to say, for example, everything that you need to create migrations also ends up in the schema. So currently we've got the title, and we know it's a string, and we know what the label is, but let's just say we wanted the album title to be unique. We've got no information here that tells us that that should be unique. So when we do the database migrations, we can't actually automatically generate that because we don't have the extra data we need to know that this should be unique. And I have no way of predicting all of the extra fields that you're going to require to add here. So essentially what I plan on adding is some sort of tooling where you can add your own rules so that when you open this up, you also get some extra fields here, which are your own fields that you've added. And one of them might be, for example, unique. So you might have a toggle that says unique, and if you toggle that to true, and maybe this is part of your Laravel field, so you'd be able to create like little packages. One would be like maybe your database migrations package. And if you add your database migrations, maybe not package, plugin, let's say. If you add your database migrations plugin, then you would get more fields here. And one of those fields would be is unique. There's several things that you could add in there. And then if you ticked is unique, then when you come up here and look at the schema, title would have like maybe you would nest it in another object, like Laravel is unique is equal to true, or database is unique is equal to true. So now once that's happened, once you've added that plugin and you've got now that extra flexibility, you can start doing things like saying, oh, this should be nullable. Then at a database level, it's going to be nullable as well. And so you can start adding the fields you need to generate even more things. So at the end of the day, we want to make it so that you don't actually write any code for your models. So you just come in here, you define everything really quickly. And my dream for this is that I can be on a car trip with my friends. So me and my coding friends are going on a holiday, so that we can think up really cool ideas for what we're going to build. And I can sit, and that's why it kind of looks like a mobile app. You'll notice that this sort of, yeah, I was kind of building this with a mobile app in mind. So imagine you're going on a car trip, going up along the coast, beautiful beaches, you're stopping, your brain's like really free and clear, you're having like really awesome chats, you're talking about life, and then you just come up with these really cool ideas for apps that you want to build. Or you just like meet some person, like some really cool business person that has an idea for an app, whilst you're, going on this sort of mini sabbatical. And then you go, oh man, I got a cool ideas for this. You come in here into the schema creator, and you could just literally open it on your phone and map the whole thing out. And you can be sitting there in the car, and somebody who's driving the car can be like, oh, don't forget to add like, we need to have like a post, and the post needs to have such and such, or, we need to have tanks because maybe you're building a fuel app. Oh, and make sure that we normalize this and this. So since that needs to be normalized, you need to pull these two bits of data into their own models. And you're coming in here and you're editing things and you're changing bits and pieces here and there, and you're, whilst you're on holiday. And then that night, if you and your mates like want to code, then you get out your computers. You've already built this with LSD Project. This is going to have a CLI tool. So then you say like LSD Project space or whatever the CLI tool's called. And I think I'm going to get rid of the word LSD here. I've decided. I don't really like it. But anyway, so you pull out your phone, you enter it. And then when you get home, you open up your CLI tool, and it might look something like this. Let's just say it's LSD Project, and this would be authenticated. You'd have some sort of an authentication file on your computer so that it can hit this API. You enter the name of the project. In this case, it's called like sample data, or maybe let's call it like, maybe we met an optometrist. Optometrist. I don't know how to spell this. Optometrist, doesn't matter. So then you enter the name of your project, and then you could say like pull, for example, or maybe even that's all you type in. And then when you type that in, it pulls in all of your schemas. Okay, so all of these schemas, you got album schema, your user schema, blah, 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 all of that gets pulled in. And then you would just say pnpm generate to run the generate command that you would get with the modular quasar template. So it would come with this sort of already set up. And then that would generate all of your models. And then you might open up your Laravel project. Or maybe we can do this at a top level somehow. I don't know, I have to think about it. But then in your Laravel project, you could do the same thing, where you can basically just say like LSD project generate. Yeah, we'd probably do something like that, where you can say LSD project generate, and then it basically finds your Laravel project, it finds your front-end project, and then automatically generates all your Laravel models, all your Laravel migrations, all of your Pina ORM models. So you've got full typing, and everything just gets pulled in, and you're ready to start developing. And then when you want to build like a table, for example, you can just come in here and use the table component, and it will automatically have your belongs to relationships, your many-to-many relationships. But here's the really important thing. The important thing about all of this is that it doesn't constrain you at any step of the way. So even though we're generating everything, and we're having a whole bunch of this stuff built for us, we can still tap in to every single one of these cells here. So if we don't like the way that this filter menu is working, or we want to, tweak it a little bit, we can tap into that. We can completely replace that field. We can just hide that field if we don't want to show it at all. And that goes for the tables as well. We'll be able to automatically generate all of our tables. But if there's anything we don't like about it, we can tap into it. We can change things here and there. If we want to completely rebuild that table from scratch because we've got a super, super custom way that we wanted to show it, we can do that. There are no restraints here. This is built in such a way that we start here with LSD Project, and then we can generate all of our tables, all of our forms, etc., so that we can build something really, really fast. And then later on, if we want to make more specific changes, we can do that. It's always possible to go one step lower and tap in for more flexibility. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. Just wanted to give you an idea of what I'm working on. And hopefully you're starting to see what this entire tool chain is going to look like. So you'll pull out this, you'll define what everything looks like in your project. And it'll be really easy. You've got this really nice, simple UI. We just go add a field, add a model, blah, 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 blah. You just scaffold the whole thing out. And then you go into your VS Code and you just run the generate command. It generates all your models and all your migrations and everything so that your project is ready for you to just start coding. Then you start coding and you're not using a real database. Like ideally, I actually wouldn't use Laravel to begin with. I would just have a fake database. And by the way, because of the nature of this, since this isn't coupled to Laravel, if you're using Supabase, if you're using Strapi, if you're using one of the other implementations we use for ViewModel, it will also work with that. So I'm saying Laravel, but you can replace that with your backend of choice if it's implemented with ViewModel. But anyway, that's not the point. So then when that's done, you can go show it to the client, and this can be done within hours. So you can talk to someone, jump in the car, on the drive home, somebody is, so let's just imagine rather than the holiday example, we'll do a meeting example. You drive an hour to a meeting because you got this person who you think could be a really great potential client. You drive out to them, you talk to them about this really cool idea, and then on the way home, you're mapping out that idea. You're mapping out the structure of that idea. And there might be like 2 or 3 of you in the car while on the way home, kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. Then when you get home, you crack open your computers and you've already done all the heavy lifting in terms of creating the structure whilst you were driving home, in that 1 hour driving home from the meeting. So then within about 3 hours of having the meeting, you can have a prototype that you can then show that person, which is working well. Because like, imagine this, you just, all you'd have to do for many of these prototypes, especially for very data-driven applications, is you just need to get your tables and your forms and all of that in. But there's always niche shit that needs to get covered with these applications. You always have, you've always got a client that says, I just need to make sure that I got filtering for this, this, and this. And I just need to make sure that, that can be ordered this way. And, there's usually like 3 or 4 super important things to that client that are just a little bit more difficult than just generating forms and tables. It is never just forms and tables. In fact, I did a project recently for like managing fuel pricings. And basically somebody at the start of the day wants to be able to put in their fuel pricings, press a button, and all those fuel pricings get sent off by text message and email, right? And it sounds simple, but it turns out the structure for that has actually got a few complexities in it. But we were able to get those complexities done really, really quickly. Within about 20 minutes, we had the database structure done. Okay, that's not true. It's probably more like 30 or 40 minutes because and we were able to go back and make changes as we started developing. We could just go back into LSD Project. Right now I have to download it and that gives me a zip file, and then I need to copy paste it into the project, which kind of sucks, but eventually we'll have a CLI tool for that. But we were able to just kind of generate everything, start coding, and then, usually when you're coding, you go, oh shit, I got something wrong with the structure. So just come back here, make the changes, then I can go back to coding again. Everything is fully typed. And then I go to the guy that I'm working with who has a better understanding of the business needs of the customer. And I go, this is what I got so far. How does this look? Chung, 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 chung. And he goes, oh, yeah, that looks good, but we need to change this, 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 and this. And oh, man, it'd be really cool. We got filtering there. The client would really like that. And then within about, 15 minutes, I can come back to him again and go, okay, I've made those changes that you wanted. And, I've tapped into these components in the table and now so that, you got an image for the supplier, whereas before we just had the name of the supplier, but we were able to get the logos in there, and that took like 5 or 10 minutes because we're using Quasar and it's just so freaking easy. And it's just amazing developing this way. It's insane. And so this is the dream, everyone. The dream is that we can scaffold things out really, really quickly without, at any step of the way, at every single step of the way, we never sacrifice flexibility, so that when we hit those scenarios where we need things to be a bit more advanced, we don't end up stuck. And that's possible. The reason it doesn't exist yet, and it really doesn't exist yet. Unless I've completely missed something here, I feel like I've scoured the web for this kind of a model. The reason it doesn't exist, I think, is because developers are usually trying to make a broad number of people happy. And the ones that scope in a little bit more, I find to be really, really useful projects, but the learning curve goes up. And this is the thing. So if you just want to do plain JavaScript, there's not that much of a learning curve, but it takes forever and it actually ends up being more difficult. If you go one step higher than that and you put the effort into learning something like Vue.js, then it takes more time to learn and it's actually a little bit harder to begin with, but then everything is way, way, way easier. It's easier to use Vue.js than JavaScript. Now, if you go one step higher than that to something like Quasar, again, it's harder to learn because now you need to understand how all the components work. You need to have a pretty good understanding of slots if you want to know how to really customize Quasar. And, you need to have a pretty good understanding of props, etc. Because you now need to have slightly more advanced knowledge to do everything you wanted to do. To do everything you want to do is way slower with Vue.js, but if you go to a Quasar level, then everything you want to do is faster once you've learnt it. All right. So every step of the way here, we're adding more requirements to learn. But if you put the effort into doing that learning, then, and this is why, the Vue community gets really big, but then you see the outskirts of those communities. So like your Vuetify, your Quasar, your Nuxt, your whatever, they gradually get filled in. They don't get filled in straight away. People learn Vue first. Then once they know Vue, people build the projects on top of Vue, and then those projects end up getting filled in, right? So you kind of get this like tree-like effect where people go one step lower, but then it takes a while for people that step lower to then go one step lower again, right? So we've essentially now gone JavaScript, Vue, Quasar, or JavaScript, Vue, Nuxt, or whatever. Now, usually people stop there, and it's for various reasons. It's because one of the biggest reasons being flexibility. So people don't like not being able to do things their way. But here's what I think. I think if you sacrifice people being able to do things their way, and you basically say, look, you have to do things my way, and you can, you still allow people to drop down. You can still drop out of your way of doing things, but you essentially say, look, if you agree to use Vue, and you agree to use Quasar, and you agree to use Vue Model, which is one of the projects I've built, and you agree to use Vue Auth, which is another project I've built for managing authentication, and you agree to use LSD Project for structuring your data, and you agree to use Augment Quasar on top of your project, right? So you have to buy into a lot of these technologies. You don't have to buy into all of them, but the benefits kind of piggyback off of each other. But if you can say, look, you have to, all that time you spent learning Vue and Quasar, which might be, let's say, 30 or 40 hours of your life to get to a point where you're, quite good at it. You'll probably have to sink even more hours. You might have to sink, 50 more hours before you're super competent at this. But I can then say, look, if you buy into these extra technologies and you sink in those extra hours, the benefits are going to be huge. It's a harder sell because you start losing people at that point, because, there's going to be like one or two little things that they don't like about what you're doing. So you're going to lose people at some point. However, the ones that you don't lose, I believe, are going to get these, phenomenal benefits when they're building projects. And the problem is, I think a lot of the stuff that I'm building here probably exist in larger companies, maybe companies that can afford to sink a lot of time into building something like this. But, it's much harder for a community to buy into something like that. I don't know, actually, maybe that's wrong. I could be wrong about this. And I think there are ways that you can build this in a way that's so flexible that it can work for more than one framework, but that just takes way, way more work. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. Super excited about it. Hope you all enjoyed this one. I love doing these live streams. And yeah, in the next one, maybe we'll start building again. Cheers, Luke. Thanks for your job in this. You're very welcome. I'll see you in the next live stream. Thanks for watching.